Greenhouse bitter orange. Greenhouses don't sleep. They hold their breath. After the docents go home and the last stroller squeaks down the ramp, after the gift shop locks its postcards and the fountain swallows its own voice, the Byron Conservatory changes languages. Daylight is clipboards and plant labels and volunteers who apologize to ferns. Night is the slow thrum of fans, the patient ticking of condensate, a sodium lamp haloing the leaves like a late confession. If you've never stood among citrus at 2 in the morning and heard how a tree negotiates with darkness, you don't know how a room can ask you for honesty without saying a word. I'm Caleb, head horticulturist at Byron, keeper of keys and cuttings and the temper of the marine layer. My office is an annex beside the potting benches, glass on 3 sides, concrete floor that holds the daytime heat like a low memory. On my desk, a loop of brass tags for trees older than me, pruning shears that mind their manners, a ledger smelling faintly of damp paper and lemon oil, and a pocket tin of blue carpenter's chalk I should not technically use for anything botanical. There's also a saucer that once belonged to a different life, and now catches the citrus peel I rub when I'm trying not to call a person who doesn't live here anymore. Mara, my wife, then, could make a room perform. Event designer, brand whisperer, she could talk a museum staircase into feeling like it was born for a champagne entrance. We met over rented palms and the argument of uplights, 2 professionals pretending not to be impressed. She liked my patience with stubborn trunks and brittle reputations. I liked how she could lift a tumbler of soda water and make it look like victory. We kept Wednesdays as a habit and a promise. She'd come through the staff gate with a hood up and a smile for the night guard who liked to pretend he didn't see. And I would be in the citrus house with a hand already under the mist, looking for the pulse of the evening. If this sounds like bragging, I'm only building the room. There's a bruise along my spine from the lip of bench C where she pushed me once, laughing, and I knocked a row of clay pots into a polite avalanche. There's a comma of a birthmark below her left ear I knew like a landmark. There's a way she said, "We have 10," that made me feel we were robbing a bank even though what we took was minutes, and we always returned one, folded under our tongues for later. The first oddness came disguised as maintenance. 0011 Southgate held open 6s. Nobody holds that gate. It complains with a voice shaped exactly like a fine if you do. 0013 Citrus House door cycle 2. It shouldn't cycle. My house is obedient. In the fridge for cuttings, where interns hide their lemonades when they think plants need the cold more than they do, 2 splits of Ricet vanished into adult choices I didn't authorize. On the lip of the stainless sink in the potting annex, a thin ribbon of lipstick dried the color of a bruised plum, mint clinging to its edge, as if menthol is a signature we all agreed on. I told myself a good story. Caterers had been in late, a donor tour ran long, some assistant with a camera and an internship tasted glamour and left a print. The next Thursday offered the same minutes, 0011 a held gate, 0013 the polite cough of the citrus door, a smear of scent that didn't belong to Mara. On the floor under the Mayor lemon labeled VCIT21, a tiny clear disc winked when my headlamp passed. Not an earring, a silicone earbud tip, transparent as a lie intended to pass for air. I kept it like a pebble in my pocket, and it made the same small honesty a pebble makes every time it reminds you that you're carrying it. Mara broached open on a Wednesday with her hair damp and her voice careful. We were folding towels into thirds because thirds are calmer than halves, and she spoke like an architect nomming a load-bearing wall. "With rules," she said. "With care, with us before anyone else." She didn't touch me while she said it. She stood with one hip against the counter, braced like a sailor who trusts the boat more than the sea. I wanted to be large. The greenhouse teaches generosity. You give a plant the room it asks for, or it will teach you the cost. We wrote it down. No one from the conservatory. No donors. Tell before, not after. Protection always. Our bed as a border country we both guarded. The first week she kissed me like a treaty. The second like an apology that couldn't find the right noun. The third she texted at 11:08 client overran. Don't wait up, and the conservatory held its cobalt breath at 00:11 again. I didn't set a trap, not at first. I rearranged duty rosters so I'd have a reason to be there on nights I had no reason. I pretended not to be listening when the gate chimed and the citrus door whirred. I told myself a better story in which telling existed in the gray area between generosity and laziness. When the better story made my chest tight, I did what the plants taught me. I looked for signs. Soil tells truth if you let it. We have black cards smeared with adhesive near certain plants to count pests. A stupid, brilliant strip that thieves wings and tells you who came to dinner. I moved too, quietly, to the back corridor that runs from the staff gate to the annex. Glitter is an insect if you need it to be. I dusted the inside of the citrus door handle with a breath of carpenter's chalk and pollen from a bitter orange blossom. Citur. Beautiful and mean-smelling, the way honesty sometimes is. I tied a tiny brass bell to the hook of the annex door where no one ever ties bells. If the building is a heart, I wanted to hear its murmur. 00:11 Southgate held sevens. 00:13 Citrus Dorsi, a line of chalk along the inside plate where a hand had to be. 00:15 Bell, a shy clink. And under bench C, one sticky card wore confetti like a reckless debutante had lost a battle. Glitter, a scale insect's evil twin. In the potting sink, a lip print of Rimmel 810 Heartbreaker. I didn't know the name then. I learned it later, but its reflection. Beside it, an empty glass with a faint ring of Risset, and a note with the conservatory's Wi-Fi password that Mara had written and told someone in a way that didn't count as telling me. I could pretend surprise when I tell you her name, Kaya Noor. Perfumer on the internet sent alchemist on paper, a real nose in a world that loves to pretend. She posted about us. Not our story, she is not stupid, but the Byron citrus and the midnight cathedral of leaves, her caption said. A video of hands ghosting the air above the blossoms, not touching, and a voiceover promising a new bitter orange accord in collaboration with a heritage institution. She didn't tag us. She didn't have to. Our donors were very online. My phones did a discreet panic on a Monday. Mara came to my office on a Thursday, not quite steady. Her hair was pinned with the speed of fast decisions. Her mouth had the flattened line of someone who had chosen a path and was waiting for the first tree to tell her no. Her wrist glowed when I flipped on the UV wand we keep for counterfeit cash and regrettable behavior. Chalk and pollen speak fluently in that light. She glanced down at her own skin and then at me. I saw the exact instant she found out why denial is an expensive hobby. "Don't turn me into the villain," she said, tired, not cruel. "I asked for before," I said. "I thought I did," she answered, and that was the worst part. In her grammar, client overran was a confession. In mine, it was choreography. We found the length of our rule book and realized it didn't cover the part of the floor we were standing on. Kaya stepped into the doorway with a generosity that was also ownership. She smelled like citrus rind and warm amber, the kind of smell that makes you remember a person you haven't met. She looked at me with the patient courtesy of someone who respects the building more than the man. "I can find my way out," she said to the air, and the bell on the annex door made a single polite sound as if to welcome her absence. We didn't perform. I did not ask security to grow muscles they didn't need. I walked them to the south gate and pressed the plate button that opens a door smoother than the human hand allows. The jasmine outside was throwing a small party. I stood with the smell of it and the sort of quiet you get after a truck leaves. We separated like professionals. Mara found a loft where the windows invented light. She took the bar cart and the good champagne flutes and the black dress I'm still not done admiring in retrospect. I kept the chipped mug with a faded lemon on it, and the saffron throw she always stole to wrap around her calves because backstage air has a way of forgetting it isn't winter. We were clean then. Clean is not painless, but it doesn't stain the next thing you touch. The Byron Conservatory returned to asking for what it needs. A shipment of palms arrived with instructions in Portuguese and patience stamped into the wood. The new intern confused mist and drench, and I taught her the difference with my hand under a spigot and a grin. We hosted a school group with backpacks the size of their hopes, and a small boy put both hands on the glass in front of the corpse flower and whispered, "Wake up," like an order to himself. The building exhaled. I learned where the fans click when they've forgiven heat. Ria came during a nor'easter that had the city encouraging roofs to pretend. On paper, Ria Ansel, structural engineer. In her posture, a person who measures before she promises. She had a pencil behind her ear and rain on the shoulders of a coat that knew the difference between expensive and good. We shook hands over a table covered in drawings and damp maps of the roof pan. She traced with one finger the span between two beams and said, "The glass has moods. Yours does too." Her smile did that thing where it made a small room larger without moving any walls. We began as colleagues. She crawled the catwalks with me, lamp between her teeth when she needed both hands. She listened to the building by putting her palm on metal and waiting for it to tell her about itself. She watched the fog roll over the city while I adjusted misters, and she ran a dry fingertip along the edge of a pane to catch a drip before it became an argument. I noticed her wrists before anything else, not because they were delicate. Nothing about Ria is fragile, but because of the way tendons declared themselves when she tightened a bolt. She smells faintly of pencil shavings and rain, and something warm I learned later is a skin cream she doesn't talk about. "You ever change the spectrum for yourself?" she asked, standing under the sodium lamps one night when the fans were quieter than truth. "When the plants ask," I said. "What are they asking now?" Her voice softened like she was agreeing to a plan neither of us had said out loud. "To be treated like a church," I said, "and then once like a room with a bed." We kissed in the threshold to the citrus house because thresholds are the only honest place for a new thing. Half in, half out, the air getting to vote. Her mouth tasted of tea and patience. She kept her eyes open for an extra beat, not to check for witnesses, but to make sure she had picked me and not just a room. I put a palm against her ribs just under her coat, and her breath answered the question I hadn't thought to ask aloud. We did not hurry. We were grown-ups, and speed impresses mostly the frightened. We made rules that sounded like respect, not fences. No intimacy near anything with a Latin name older than us. No turning the house into a stage. Yes to the bench under the feijoa at 2 a.m. with the mist set low, coats rakish on hooks, mouths smiling into each other when my elbow bumped a pot, and the pot made its useful protest. Yes to the maintenance stare where no camera bothers to look because fans like secrets. Yes to my office with the lights low and the fans pretending they couldn't hear. When the gala came, night in the glass cathedral, I wore a suit that had to be argued into behaving. Donors came with checkbooks and fragrant intentions. The band tuned in the Palm House, and the valet lane performed its own ballet. Mara arrived with Kaya on her arm, both of them more interesting than necessary. Kaya's smile made other smiles remember posture. Mara's dress had an argument with gravity and won. We saw each other across the lemon trees and executed the nod people do when everyone survived their own decisions. Kaya sniffed the air, smiled at the bitter orange blossoms, and for once did not raise her phone. Rhea wore black and didn't apologize. She stood with her back to a column, listening to a donor explain humidity as if it were her new idea, and caught my eye with an expression that made my chest loose. During the speech about enduring legacies, a gecko made a slow, arrogant journey up a philodendron stem behind the podium. It blinked. It has no stake in our pronouncements. After the applause and the rented glassware had told themselves good night, after the DJ had surrendered and the caterers had staged their quiet miracle with trash bags and grace, I took my last walk. The South Gate behaved. The sticky cards in the corridor wore only gnats and their confessable cousins. The bell on the annex door slept. In my desk drawer, beside the tin of chalk, and a coil of monofilament I now use only for training vines, lay 2 clear earbud tips and a paper scrap with Byron Guest and a password in Mara's hand. I put those quotation marks back into the drawer and closed it like a benediction. Rhea found me under the sodium glow, her hand slipping into mine without the pretense of accident. "We done being polite to rooms that aren't ours?" she asked. "I will always be polite to rooms," I said, "but I am learning which one is allowed to be messy with me." We took the bench under CITAUR. The blossoms were mean and beautiful, and the smell threaded itself through every decision I'd made in a year. I put my mouth against the place below her ear where language thinks about being born, and she made a sound that I put away for later, because some sounds deserve a drawer. She slid her palms under my jacket and over my shirt, and I remembered the kindness of steady hands. We counted to 10 and used 9, not because we were afraid of running out, but because it's generous to tip the night. If you came to the conservatory on a night like that, you'd hear the fans purr, the drip count, the small bark of a gecko who thinks he's a tenor. You might see a man move through trees the way he hopes to be moved through, gently, with attention, without theater he can't afford. You might smell bitter orange and think of medicine and love at once. You might learn that a greenhouse is not just a place where living things are displayed. It's where they ask you to change with them, or at least not to lie. I lock the south gate and run my thumb over the nick in the steel plate at exactly hand height, mapping a constellation no one else cares about. Rhea leans a shoulder into mine and gets rain on my sleeve just by being who she is. Somewhere, my ex-wife is making a room do pirouettes. Somewhere, a perfumer is learning the limits of a blossom that refuses to get sweeter to be liked. Here, under glass warm from the last of yesterday, a man who went meek in the wrong places once is practicing courage in the right one. Greenhouses don't sleep, they dim. They do not forgive quickly, but they do forgive. The bitter orange does not apologize for being honest. I wash my hands in the sink and watch chalk dissolve into a cloud that looks briefly like evidence and then like nothing at all. I turn off the sodium lamps and let the leaves inherit the moon. When the building breathes out, I breathe with it. I check the fans. I check the locks. I keep the last minute folded under my tongue, small, citrus, patient.